Moving on, our next session is Practitioners Chat on the topic Personalization 3.0, Incorporating Human Behavior. Rise of data-rich engineering platforms that solve for economic, information, entertainment, and socialization needs of users has led to an explosive of user data and possibilities of personalization. While personalization identifies needs and recommendations based on past user information, Personalization 3.0 is about incorporating human behavior and related segments to generate the right contextual recommendations. Our speakers for this session are Amnish Sharma, Director, Technology Futures Intuit. Amnish is passionate about innovation and the use of technology to create incredible products and services that deliver remarkable customer benefits. As a leader of Technology Futures Group, his role circumscribes identifying technology trends and incorporating innovative ways to amalgamate technologies. Joining him on the panel is Kalpana Behra, Head of Digitization, Global Scaled Solutions, Uber. Kalpana has over 20 years of experience in the technology industry. She has been an early hire at Google, Facebook, and Uber, helping build the initial foundation during the hyper-growth of the tech industry. She held a number of global leadership roles in her career and has a track record of building a strong culture focused on diversity and strong ethics. We also have Mayur Datra, Chief Data Scientist, Flipkart. Mayur has been with Flipkart for close to 6 years now and serves the role of Principal Data Scientist in the organization. He leads a large team of data scientists, and together they work on building the most advanced e-commerce landscape in India with the help of data science. He's known in the industry for his technical leadership, pragmatic result-oriented machine learning and systems design, and experience in internet consumer-related challenges. Chairing this session is Rahul Desai, Client Partner, Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning, Fractal Analytics. Rahul leads Fractal's AI/ML practice, including customer genomics, Fractal's flagship solution for personalization. He has 18 plus years of experience in analytics, including AI/ML, quantitative finance, and revenue management. Pleasure to have all of you join us today. Rahul, over to you.
All right. Thank you, Justin, for the introduction. And thank you, NASSCOM, for the opportunity to really host such a brilliant panel on a topic which fundamentally touches each and every one of us almost every day of our lives, and that's personalization. Now, I think personalization has been around for quite a while now, going back 30, 40 years from the time we started building the first kind of expert scorecards or started building segmentation schemas to understand customers better or build the first propensity models, right? We've always tried to, try and understand customers better and, give them messaging or nudges which are quite relevant for them, right? But if I kind of look at the overall journey of personalization, I think we can kind of artificially break it down into 3 phases. Phase number 1 is kind of pre-digital or some of the nascent, digital work where we kind of started to do some of the techniques that I spoke about. The second phase is fundamentally when, the digital signals started exploding. A lot of digital natives started to get more granular, deeper, faster signals on customers. And the third phase is really, the future is the point where, is fundamentally data good enough? Is data enough to understand personas? Can we incorporate elements of human behavior into this? Right. So with that precursor, it's an absolute pleasure to host some of the industry experts in this area who represent organizations, who have built some of the finest consumer facing products in the world. So absolute pleasure to host you folks, and really looking forward to learn more about personalization and talk about it. So with that, to the very first part of this, Now, at Fractal, personalization is something we do and we are very, very passionate about. But if I put on, the lens of an AI service provider who helps other organizations try and do personalization, one thing is quite clear is that the traditional omni-channel, large behemoth organizations, with millions of customers and thousands of products, right? The whole complex ecosystem. In spite of having good data, they've probably lagged some of the digital natives in this art and science of personalization. So I'd like to open with that theme. So Amnish, I'd like to start with you. What can traditional organizations, a lot of whom will be represented in the audience today, what do you think they can learn from industry leaders like yourselves? And how do you think they can bridge that gap in terms of doing personalization at scale?
Sure. Thank you, Rahul. I mean, maybe I kind of delve upon what personalization, we think we do at Intuit, and maybe we start from there to go on to explain how we can actually help other on the journey on personalization. So we all understand the intent of personalization is to deliver personalized insights and advice to the customers. And in the context of Intuit, these insights provide customers with a view of their finances, from their spending habits to saving opportunities, and basically recommending actions to better manage their small business or personal finances. So personalization actually tells our customers that we really know them and we really care about their well-being. It also helps in increasing the value of interactions, if you really see about it, right? Enhancing trust, building durable relationships. And at Intuit, we believe personalization is not a selling activity, but it is all about empowering customers to offer choices and promoting actually financial well-being for the small business and consumers. And some of the key trends which I have been seeing around, in personalization are related to changing customer behaviors, right? And how that will influence personalization, how people interact with their devices and how they make decisions. If you look around, I think nowadays, people are always busy with so much of decision-making and so much of responsibility. There is so much less time for them to look into something focused in a focused way. So I believe the simplicity and the intuitive designs are becoming very, very paramount, right? This also helps to the customer, to be in control and feel confident. This is all the more paramount for a company like us who are in the business of improving the financial life of other people. And they should feel confident about what they are trying to do. Another important thing which I feel in the context of personalization is at Intuit we have very, very unique relationship. We see that there is a unique relationship of people, individuals with their own finances. So I think it is very important to understand the context of individuals. And I believe the other important part that you also touched upon is basically about predictive and omni-channel personalization. I think these are, of course, taking center stage. And to the organizations, I believe that are on the personalization journey, my guidance would be to look holistically. There are basically three key aspects if I look into it in more detail. First one is to focus on your customer. Don't just think personas. Instead, think behavior and personas. Maybe test different messages to different group of customers, and to say in a more cliched way, put yourself in your customer's shoes, right? We all say that, right? I think customers no longer base their perceptions solely on price, product, or convenience. Instead, their expectations, as we look into the future, at least, we believe that it will be based on speed, simplicity, and context. And the second thing is to focus on the right technology, investing in the right set of the tools to gather enough data, and accurate data is absolutely a must. I think that is table stakes. And if you want to provide faster insights, this is important, right? And how do we otherwise empower customers? And thirdly, invest in the right organizational structure, because companies cannot afford to look at their customers from siloed business. We all have been into those places where marketing, sales, customer 360, customer success, etc., whatever we call them, they're all looking at the same customer in a very different way. I think the process needs to be reversed, and the organization should structure in a way to support customer perspective. Customer should be in the front and the center. So I think these are three basic recommendations I would encourage organizations to follow while they're new in the journey of their personalization. Thank you, Rahul.
No, thank you, Amnish. That was excellent and very succinctly put in terms of a structure. Kalpana, I'll come to you next. I think you and Mayur are working often with very, very high velocity, very granular data. What do you think are key learnings? And I think Amnish mentioned something around simplicity of design, which I think all three of these organizations that you folks represent are brilliant at designing consumer products. So would love to hear your thoughts on this, Kalpana, and then I'll go over to Mayur.
Yeah, you mentioned traditional organizations. What I'm most excited about in this space is that the lines between traditional organizations and tech organizations have started blurring. There is no organization that is not touched by tech. So I feel like as organizations go through this transition from a traditional business model, traditional way of running their business, to more progressive technologies, AI and ML models in specific, I think the three key things that will drive that change is: one, hiring the right kind of talent. Having progressive leadership is very important, because a lot of serious change in an organization is first driven top down. And having the right leadership that can think not just about today, but merging what they do really well today with technology that is evolving very quickly is going to be very important. The second thing is building a data connected culture. An organization is never one siloed team working on its own. Building teams that are connected with data, and seamless exchange of data from one context to another context, and enabling all of this infrastructure is going to be very important. And the third thing is, I'm a big believer of top-down goals. If an organization is truly wanting to transform the way they do business, the leadership has to take specific big bets that are associated with AI and ML, because it's always today's world is a combination of very deeply understanding human behavior and building systems that can benefit from that understanding and turn into business opportunities.
Thank you, Kalpana. Very, very insightful. I fully agree. I mean, in our experience, whenever we've encountered progressive leadership, whose vision is this kind of holistic decisioning, trying to de-silo data, we've seen the least friction to success on the route to success, and least friction towards adoption. Mayur, love to hear your thoughts on this. Please, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Rahul. Flipkart is an e-commerce company, and as you rightly said, right, it's a organization that has a huge customer base, a seller base, and so on and so forth, right? Now, first of all, why is personalization even important to an organization like us, right? We spend a lot of efforts into customer acquisition, right? But once we have acquired a customer, there's a long journey to go from a user whom we have just acquired to actually becoming a loyal customer, right? And that requires us to really empathize with the customer, understand the customer needs, make sure that we connect him or her to the right products and delight him through the entire shopping journey, right? And not just the shopping journey, but even the post-order experience, right? And unless we provide our users with delightful experiences, they'll not keep coming back to us, right? There's a lot of competition out there, and it's very easy for a customer to move from one organization to another, right? So for us, personalization is a lot about showing customer empathy, letting him or her know that, look, we understand you, right? Now, you talked about how we have millions of customers, and in fact, we have millions of products and so on and so forth, right? But in a marketplace like ours, actually personalization has, besides the main motivation that they talked about, namely to delight customers, to retain them, to make them more loyal customers, and to keep them engaged on a platform, right? There's another motivation for us as well. when somebody types in a broad query like shoes or saris or watches, right? There's a tendency for platforms like us to keep showing the same results, right? So there's a notion of rich becomes richer, right? Which means we learn signals about what customers like, and therefore we keep showing the same results on the top. Unfortunately, while in an aggregate sense that probably makes sense, when a customer from a tier 2 city searches for watches, it doesn't make sense to show him some very expensive high brand watch, right? So it's important to bring in diversity in your search results, in your recommendations, which tell the customer that, hey, look, I understand your needs better, and therefore I'm going to show you results different from what I showed somebody else. Because sitting in a tier 2 place, or not just because you're in a tier 2 place, right? Based on what you've, on the actions and the behavior that you've shown in the past, we understand that you're a value customer. You're not a premium customer, and therefore we will show you different results. Helps him, but more importantly, it also helps the sellers, right? We are a two-sided marketplace, and it gives more exposure to our sellers, more exposure to our products, so that they also get chance for business, right? So that's some of the other advantages to personalization. So you started your question saying that what do traditional organizations can learn, right? No, again, like it's very hard to say what traditional organizations today are, but what I would say is that I agree with some of the comments earlier, namely that, hey, look, we cannot silo our data, right? Just like Kalpana said, it's important to get a holistic view of our customers and put it together in one place, and your platform should enable that, right? That's one of the key necessities to become a data first, data driven organization. So that's one of the things. But also, initially, I think a lot of organizations had the same exact experience for everyone, right? So the look and feel of the site or look and feel of the content did not much change, right? Earlier, personalization was a lot about just changing the ranking and things like that. So, right, that is changing now. You look at feel of the site, what menu items are given to you versus somebody else is changing, right? So that personalization is also a second part that I would emphasize for all organizations, traditional or otherwise, saying that one, focus on your data, collect all of the data, and two, customize your experiences as well. I'll stop here. I know there's a lot to talk about here.
No, thank you very much, folks. I think very brilliant insights. And I think overall, I see all your thoughts converging towards one thing, which is fundamentally when we start thinking about personalization or the next generation, it's not so much about technology forward. It has to be experience backwards. So I think it's the key here is to to drive that right experience for that end customer or the end user, right? So that gives us a brilliant segue into the future, right? About of personalization. Of course, you guys are experts at crafting excellent experiences for customers. Just given the fact that you have just such a huge set of customers who are very loyal, who are keep coming back to the apps and products that you create all the time. But my question is, with every click, more about a customer, or you go deeper into a customer journey, right? Data is getting faster, it's getting more granular. But fundamentally, when I book an Uber, or buy something on Flipkart, right, or I do something on Intuit, right, or on one of your software, my final decisioning, there is a bit of an irrationality to it, or there is something that data doesn't capture. It's about the context. It's about maybe previous episodic experiences that I've had. There's a little more to it than data. We all know, right, how we buy expensive gifts, we buy expensive products, or even if you buy a simple pair of shoes, right? It's all about context, which is probably not captured in data. My question to you folks is, what can we learn? How far can we be making? There's so much work going on, for example, in terms of those last second decisions, or those last second decisions, whether you take it in shopping or you take it in sports. Something that triggers those decisions. So yeah, again, I'll probably go in the same order. Manish, any thoughts on what else can we bring to the table other than just plain data? Because that's something that's going to get highly commoditized very soon.
Absolutely. I think so I think deep understanding of the target audience is fundamental to creating awesome or exceptional products. We all kind of can share. And as you were mentioning that sometimes it's a combination of persona and context, right? So personas actually tell us in a more elaborate way that who we are designing these products for. Who's our end customer? What are their expectations? What are their concerns? What are their motivations? And I think behavioral patterns are very common ways in which users interact with the products, right? Identifying them actually tells us how users will behave in a particular context. So at Intuit, we have a very interesting concept which we call as Follow Me Home, where we meet our customers in their own setup and observe them how they interact with the products. The idea is at the outset, we do not ask anything like why are they interacting with our products in a specific way. The process is to only observe and actually relish surprises, and there are plenty of them. Apart from Follow Me Homes, the quantitative and qualitative data that we collect from user research can also serve as a foundation for some of those behavioral patterns. And I think product teams in our company use empathy maps, affinity diagrams, journey analysis to group people that share similar behavior patterns, which can be then modeled into a user persona. In fact, being a financial product company, I think sometimes people feel very less confident when they interact with such kind of products. So we have designed a solution to help our customers through their first 90 days journey into the product. This actually helps customer to overcome the complexities of the product and accustom them with the lay of the land, as we call it. And actually it helps in efficient use of the customer resources, as well as it also builds confidence. So I think some of these, are these techniques that we use to uncover context, right? And to talk about, maybe we can, I can kind of go touch upon the behavioral aspect as well. There is a lot we can understand from behavioral economics, right? Behavioral economics studies how customer choices are influenced by factors that are seemingly unrelated to the product itself. Now, these could be psychological, cognitive, cultural, or social. And then there is very interesting concept built on this idea called personalized choice architecture, and that can help predict and influence customer choices by creating so-called nudges, right? In simple word, nudge is a machine learning program that has been trained using theories of behavioral economics to encourage customer to do a specific task, or to put it simply, actually buy a specific product. I think the promise here, what we are making is that it will be able to better predict what customer will want on a more personalized basis. And I think I also want to kind of also mention that there are a lot of such behavioral practices which are already in use. We see around it, like the power of free, right? We see all over the place that we see advertisements like buy one, get one free, buy two, but we don't see buy two product, get 50% off. While both of these statements are fundamentally the same, but consumers get a very different mental response when they see these two statements. Or the principle of scarcity, right? Which I'm sure we have seen it many times in Flipkart. It's a limited time offer. Or a loss aversion. We have seen all the lightning deals on all of these e-commerce platforms, right? So I think all of these behavioral principles and many more could be modeled into an evolving definition of the context and help in a more human personalization.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that. I think context, I think, is something that you touched upon, and trying to, quantify to a great degree what the personas are through data signatures. Kalpana, over to you. I think context is everything for you. I think, there's a lot of, the weather, where you are, your location potentially is very, very important. So your thoughts on, how would you bring in context? Is there a lot of play of external data while we are, I think, very good at encoding the entity? Can we encode anything around the surrounding, the environment, the context, in your opinion?
Context is very, very important, and like Amish touched upon behavioral economics. That's the key to building commercial products, because behavioral economics teaches us two things, right? What is the rational problem that is being solved when a buyer is going through that point of spending their money for a service or a product, understanding that as well as possible. And the second thing is, how do you maximize and optimize the expected utility of what they are buying? And if you convert this into very simple terms as to how a product solves this problem, at Uber, there is a lot of investment that we put in for building tailored experiences. And this generally happens by combining two things. One, pick a real life situation, and then use AI-driven predictions. And when we combine these two really well, then you have an experience that is very natural. I mean, while experiences can be magical and delightful and all of that, I feel that the most powerful manifestation of a perfect combination of a real problem and an AI-driven prediction is when the interaction seems very normal, very natural. Like, that's a decision that you would have taken as a simple human being with your brain working the way it's supposed to work. And if a machine can do that, I think that's a huge win. And I'll give you an example. So we have this product called Uber Eats, which is basically into food tech. You order food and that gets delivered. It's the on-demand product. The simple problem there is, let's say I order something from a particular restaurant and that item is not available. Simple real life situation. What kind of an alternative can we provide that seems really natural? And personalization plays a very big part here, is because we can make generalizations. Like, generally people order this as an alternative when the their preferred product or item is not available. But personalization goes a little deeper. I, as a person, may have very specific choices. How much can the system understand what I would find as an alternative product, and can it show me that alternative recommendation at the right time? So that's one big part of how do we achieve that in the most natural way possible. Another area, which is again a very simple problem that has been there forever, is customer support. Like, you have a problem. Products do kind of fall short of customer experiences all the time, and a customer reaches out to the company for a resolution. Can you build bots that solve a problem as well as a human being can? Because there's so much context goes into problem solving. Can we enhance that experience by providing the right solution to the right person in the fastest time possible? So I guess these are the two areas where I feel like we are investing, where we are investing a lot, and will be interesting to see how this emerges in the world in general.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Kalpana, for that. Those thoughts, I fully agree. I think the last few years of academic research on unstructured data has quite significantly focused on conversational AI and how humans interact with machines. And Mayur, that brings me to you. I think, hyper competitive e-commerce space, experience is everything else. The customer probably has 5 other sites open while they have Flipkart open. How do you guys do it? How do you guys do it so well? And how do you think, do you think, how do you bring in the context and, some of the things around the choice architecture or the, experience design that Kalpana was talking about? Would love to hear from you.
Yes, these are extremely important points for us as well. And first, on the behavioral economics aspect of it, right? The experience personalization that I was talking about earlier, right, is something that a lot of e-commerce companies are doing these days. And I think it's best explained with the help of an example, right? Normally, if you go back 10 years, 15 years back, right, on let's say in the US, on a sale day like a Black Friday or something of that sort, you go to an e-commerce website and there'll be the same merchandising content or same advertisement that will greet everyone, right? And that's been created by professionals. It's a professionally driven photo shoot or the placement of products on it, and the call out to the customer saying that 50% off on the best DSLR camera or something of that sort, right? Doesn't matter who the customer, right? Everybody gets to see the exact same ad, right? Times have changed. I think just to give a little bit of an industry perspective, companies in China like Tencent, Alibaba, etc., when they run their 11/11 sales, which is kind of the biggest sales for them, they literally created with the help of machines. So these are not something that the operations does it for them. These are not created by professionals, but these are actually generated by AI and so on. They create these customized merchandising contents, customized advertisements, customized product cards, which appeal to you, right? So it could be as simple as, I mean, sorry for being a little bit cliched here, but maybe I mean, and that's just to make a point, right? And I'm not trying to bin everybody, but maybe a blue background for boys versus a pink background for girls or something of that sort, right? Again, that was just meant to make an example, not at the cost of sounding too cliched here, right? But the point is that a different creative, a different call out can really make that difference in you clicking on something and buying something, right? It's not just all data driven, right? You might have a brand affinity. So even though, we might be running a sale on shoes, for example, right? If you have a brand affinity for Adidas, actually showing a creative where we place Adidas shoes there is much more likely for you to click on it. Even though really, when you click and go to the page, it's going to be the same. Like all the shoes are going to be 20% off or something of that sort, right? But because I know that you have an affinity for a particular brand or for a particular layout or for a particular call out, that aspect of it pushes you over that hump of clicking it and making that choice, right? So that's one comment that I would like to make about behavioral economics. On the context part, right? Again, I'll explain with the help of example, right? We track where the user is in terms of their journey, right? Whether this person is somebody who's early on in their journey, just trying to is aware of a particular category, or is this a user who's shown interest in something, or is this a user who's very close to a purchase decision, and so on and so forth, right? And based on that, we might customize the experiences for you. We might even do it at a particular session level. So for example, right, if you open your Flipkart app or go to a Flipkart website and start searching for shoes, let's say, right? Now we already know that you're in the market for shoes. So you might be aware that when you try to search something on Flipkart, we have a product called Auto Suggest, right? So which means we try to complete the search query for you. So because you've shown the interest in shoes, when you type in the character N, just N, right? We might complete it to Nike shoes versus for somebody else, it might be a very different query suggestion that we might have for them, right? So it's a very context-aware, personalized experience for you. And so that's how we bake in context as well into the content and the products that we have for you.
Thank you, folks. A lot of this, I know you can't obviously reveal the secret sauce, but you've told us a lot in terms of, and if I were to summarize, I think it comes down to, and we often use this mantra at Fractal when we're trying to build personalization solutions, for the less digital, more traditional organizations, is that, we believe AI is not enough. I think the aspects that we covered, right? It's about the simplicity of design, the experience that we finally curate for the end customers, and to bridge the gap between that design and the AI, lies a web of complex engineering, from data to automation to a lot of MLOps, that Kalpana was talking about, and trying to fundamentally go from the minute you click, from that event data that you spot, to what should you do next with the customer, whether it's an opening up a bot or completing a search query in a very contextual manner, or a very specific recommendation, right? So brilliant insights. Thank you very much for that. Now I'd like to go on to a side which a lot of people are increasingly talking about, right? Is the fact that, of course, one thing is, as techies, all of us tend to like solutionism. We say, you know, you put a lot of smart people behind a problem and they'll solve it, right? But often that leaves, you know, you solve a problem and creates a hole somewhere else, right? So what I'm going to touch upon is the fact that how far is too far in terms of personalization, right? Just this morning, you know, I was clowning around with my daughter, and she said, "Just be careful what you say, because you know this voice assistant is listening to you, and they're going to build you a persona as a clown, right? So be careful." So it's, you know, everyone's talking about it, right? We know people come to me and say, "Oh, you're an AI. How do they do this, right? How do they figure out what's right for me? And how do I?" It's almost uncanny. It's spooky how well some of you can figure out what next to do with us. But that raises the question: how far do you go, right, without being invasive? In today's world, where increasingly organizations are going into the realm and talking about ethical AI and responsible AI, I would love to hear your thoughts on, you know, how far is too far. And Mayur, if you don't mind, I'm going to reverse the order this time, probably start with you in terms of what your thoughts are in terms of how personalized can you get, because there's tremendous value in giving the customer what they want at the right time on the right channel. But to do that, are you invading their lives a bit too much? Is the question I want to.
Yeah, I think you know, this is a fascinating topic, right? And we've been discussing a lot about ethical AI, which has three aspects to it. One, which is privacy, fairness, and transparency, right? I think, you know, my personal belief is that we've seen a lot of testament from our users saying that personalization is important to them, right? There is a lot of value in it for them as far as personalization is concerned. So clearly there is value in it, right? I think what organizations need to do is, one, they need to be transparent with their users, right? They need to tell them what exactly what data are they collecting about them, right? They need to expose that data to them, give them the options to edit their own data, so that, you know, like you said, if there was something that we've known these examples where just because I bought a gift for my niece, you know, 3 months back, now suddenly I'm getting all the recommendations based on that, right? So that shouldn't be the case, or at least I should understand why that's happening so that I can correct it, right? So one is being transparent with the users, giving them the option of you know, controlling their data, and so on and so forth, right? The other aspect is also about fairness, like making sure that particularly for certain companies, you know, companies like Google and Spotify and so on, right? Which are not just about selling things, right? Like, how do you make sure that when somebody searches for something, you know, you represent the universe properly, right? An example that is given is when you searched for, let's say, female models, right? Predominantly earlier, you would see sort of white Caucasians models out there, right? And we need to make sure that, you know, all races, etc., are well represented, so that, you know, you don't bias people. Like, again, another example that was given, when you search for CEOs, right, the images that would pop up are predominantly of males, right? And we need to make sure that, you know, today there's a lot of women in leadership position, right? So even those need to be represented well. So that's the aspect about fairness. But I think going more directly to your question in terms of how far is far, right? I think one has to tread very carefully when it comes to certain sensitive topics or sensitive categories, right? When it comes to recommendations about, you know, I don't know, like medicines or birth control or something of that sort, right? Those can really spook customers and can leave a very bad taste in their mouth, right? So one needs to stay away from certain things, right? And also, you know, having products whereby they are continuously listening to you or snooping upon you, right? When I say listening, doesn't necessarily mean audio. It could even just be snooping all that you're browsing or snooping your email, etc. Is dangerous, right? It has to be very need-driven and to the point. So I think you need to have the maximum ROI for the data that you're collecting about users. So these are two sort of very broad views that I have in terms of how far is far. Would love to hear what others had to say.
Yeah, thank you, Mayur. Kalpana, over to you.
Yeah, Mayur touched upon like a topic that's very close to my heart, like a big part of what my team does is training ML models for various features within what Uber works on. Making sure that the training data doesn't have bias, I think, is a moral responsibility of companies that are in the business of building AI and ML models. The world is a biased place. And if you feed training data that replicates the world, your ML models, your AI predictions end up being biased. So we're kind of feeding that cycle. And I feel like, that is one area where we'll have to think differently from what the world wants or where the world is, and like push the boundaries a little in making the data representation more fair and ideal. And huge focus on doing that across the board. The other thing specifically on how far is too far, I'll give you an example. Let's say I have two products, and one product just gives me generic information as I use it, but the other product shows me that it understands my behaviors well. I will use the product that understands my behaviors well because it just makes my life easy. But at the same time, if this product kind of really understands me too well, I will switch back to the one that probably is not as sophisticated. So if you would really want the AI systems to work, the trick is to know where to draw that line. Thankfully, our government regulations around the world are also evolving. So the GDPR regulations, they protect data privacy of users. And as product developers, I think our responsibility is to make sure that our data protection policies are robust. And this is something we take very seriously at Uber, because the users trust their information with us, and how we use it is very important. And making sure that the way we use data is at an aggregate level and more aligned to understanding the behavior versus like personal details of a person. That's the difference, right? Like, when I go to my mom's place once a week, I don't want my Uber to say, it's time to go to your mom's place and pay her a visit. Like, that's intrusive. At the same time, I would love for the product to understand that there is a pattern I follow, and I would love for my product to kind of be ready for me to take an action when I need to. So I'd say, like, that is the balance, and we are learning as we go, because the definition of data privacy itself goes through changes. People are becoming a lot more open. 5 years ago, if you ask people what they consider as intrusive, it's very different from what they consider as intrusive today. The world is becoming a lot more open. So it's a continuous learning process, I would say, but companies that build products do have a moral obligation to both respect the regulations that are being formed globally, and also kind of use their judgment as they build their internal policies.
Thank you, Kalpana. Amanish, your thoughts? You deal with very sensitive financial data, so very, very relevant.
I think some of the examples what Mayur and Kalpana gave, I think they're very relevant and pertinent for us as well. I think it is financial information, even more sensitive for people to kind of worry about. But there is, at a broad level, there is no doubt that the personalization and AI systems actually do transform complex amount of information into useful personalized insights, right, for the customers. So which empowers them, enabling and taking the right decisions, which everyone wants, right? But actually, maybe at a philosophical level, I think, but to reap the real organizational or societal benefits also in general, I think we need to first trust it, right? I mean, entire system need to be trusted. And the right level of trust is earned through repeated experience. And in simple words, I think if you trust things that behave as we expect them to behave, and every time that is the experience that we have, trust is built. But trust also brings in a sense of accountability, if you think about it, because being the financial steward being the financial data steward, I think it's an immense responsibility our company actually goes through. So we need to have algorithms which are underpinning some of these personalized AI system to be transparent and be able to explain their behavior in a way humans can understand. So let me give an example. Actually, at Intuit, we use a concept called knowledge engineering, which is sort of emulating the judgment and behavior of a human expert by codifying knowledge as rules and relationship between data. And I think one of the key aspects of knowledge engineering is called explain why. And as the name suggests, it is primarily about enabling customers to know why a specific decision was made. So somebody's in the journey of filing a TurboTax, for example, and they are told that, okay, this is like $7,800. I mean, is the amount that came from something that you have to pay. But the customer can actually traverse back in the tree and understand how that information came through. So it's not a black box concept. Everything is explainable. And beyond the trust building, I think we need to incorporate some of the best practices that will guide safe and ethical management of personalization system, which are in alignment with our social norms and values, which I think Mayur also referred to, and are compliant with the law. And most important, they are fair and carry no system or human biases. So I think if we put it all this together, I think the right level of human personalization and can be created and within the territory of not invading the privacy of people.
Thank you very much. Folks, I think we are coming up on time. We can talk about personalization, the pros and cons, and get in details and talk about it all day. So I hate to bring this to a conclusion, but thank you very much for your time. And I'd like to summarize on behalf of the audience, and if you allow me, on behalf of the panelists. So I think we started off by talking about what organizations can do better. And then we said, de-silo data. There's lots of data on customers. It's probably siloed across various organization places in the organization. We need to de-silo data. We need to de-silo decisioning, be a little more holistic about creating the decisions, the personalization experiences. We spoke about getting the right talent. It has to be leadership driven. And I think we have to have a culture of connected data. We spoke about the fact that while we are doing exceptionally well in terms of personalization, creating great experiences for end customers through data, context is everything. Context is extremely important. You need to be able to bring in the right context, be able to create and craft the right kind of choice and decision architectures in terms of the experience. And then, of course, we spoke about the fact that whatever experiences we design, they have to be transparent. That's the three key pillars that Mayur spoke about, and you folks reinforced is about transparency. Be transparent about the decisions. Respect the privacy, and overall be fair in terms of the kind of outputs your models are giving out. So thank you very much again for your time, and thank you NASSCOM for bringing this brilliant panel together. I hope this was enriching for the audience, and you guys have been the torchbearers of personalization, and so we look to you for guiding us on all of these aspects in the future as well. And I think with that, would love to end this session. Thank you, Mayur. Thank you, Kalpana. Thank you, Amanish, for your time and very, very valuable insights.
Thank you.
Thank you, team.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rahul, very much indeed for summing up that session brilliantly and for moderating that session. And a huge thank you to all our speakers for that very interactive and informative session.